Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Anthony Cosenza with the Orange and Black Insider, your Bengals fan podcast. We are so happy to be with you once again this week because we are just over a week away from the NFL draft. We do have a bit of an announcement. We'll get to that in just a little bit. Lot to cover tonight. We're going to do some fan questions. Obviously, have come our way. We're going to try and get to those at the end of the show, like we normally do. We have a couple of questions that we want to ask each other about the NFL draft and positions in there, and then also the hosts will be doing kind of a mini Bengals mock draft of sorts. And we're going to talk a lot about the draft, and I'm excited to have Scott Schulze with me once again on the program. Scott, how are you, sir?
Doing good. Second straight week. I have actually had video again, and I'm able to bring a little, sophistication to the podcast. I have my fancy Renoir painting behind me. So, clothesline. The weather's getting nice outside, and
You reek of taste, sir. The artwork in the background. We've got the video back. You are exuding sophistication, and I love it. It is good to have you back on video. We had you for audio, I think, a couple of shows in a row there, but good that we've got the kinks out there. We might be joined later on by Connor Howe. Not quite sure about that. Obviously, we would love to have him join us, but we'll see. He's been able to join us later in the program the past couple of weeks, and we'll see if we'll do that. Before we get into everything, I think we've made a decision for you listeners out there. Thank you for joining us live. By the way, we're on in our YouTube chat. We are also live on Cincy Jungle, so if you have questions, you can fire them in the comment thread at the post at Cincy Jungle. You can put them in the YouTube chat. You can get to us on Twitter at BengalsOBI. We've already got a couple queued up. We're going to try and get maybe a couple more as the show goes on. So let us know if you got a question and you want us to give you our valued, I guess, insight, and we'll get to those. But just a quick announcement regarding next week's show, because obviously next week is the NFL draft. It starts Thursday and goes through Saturday. I think what we've decided we're going to do, instead of doing an additional show Wednesday and then maybe doing something else, I think what we're going to do, and we've had a couple of listeners tell us that they'd like to see that, is Thursday night. We're going to start shortly after the first round begins of the draft. And I think we're going to do a live show there, talk about the picks that are going, and then obviously go through when the Bengals pick at number 9 and talk about that pick. And that'll kind of be our show. We want to make that interactive with the fans as well and the listeners that tune in. So I believe next week, probably around the usual time, that 8:30 Eastern, I believe, is right around when the draft should be really getting into full swing. So I think we're going to do a live show then and talk about the Bengals pick, get listener reactions, and obviously we'll break down the pick. We might bring in a guest to talk about it. We'll see. But I think that's going to be what we'll do next week as opposed to the normal Wednesday show. So keep that in mind, and hopefully you can join us. Obviously, the NFL draft is exciting, and it's particularly exciting for the Bengals this year, given the high picks they have and the amount of picks, 11 total so far in the draft. So that being said, let's just jump right in, Scott. A lot of different mock drafts have come out for the NFL, for the Bengals, that sort of thing. We are not necessarily draft gurus, but we know enough to, be dangerous, I suppose. So let's kind of talk about. Let's start with, now that we're a week away, let's talk about some of the positions we think are narrowed down in those first couple of rounds that the Bengals will target. Why? And then maybe let's do a little 3-round mock draft for the Bengals that we think, based on the players that have been connected to them. Sound good?
yeah. Oh, if I disappear, it's not that Ohio blew up or anything, but I think I'm on the far end of my Wi-Fi connection. So if I vanish, I shall return.
Well, you did briefly, but hopefully you heard what I said. We're gonna preview the draft and do a mock draft. Yep. So your thoughts on positions to the Bengals first of all, and then we'll get to your mock draft selections.
I think without a doubt, all indications seem to be some sort of edge rusher somewhere along the lines. I know a lot of folks. It's very, very mixed. I mean, obviously, people would like to have them target one in the first round if you could, because that way you kind of get your pick of the litter. The problem is it's so deep that you have to ask, well, is the value really there? Is someone, other than the kid from Texas A&M, are they really worth that pick? And if they don't take a guy number 9 overall, I assume somewhere in there they are going to take an edge rusher. They seem to have brought a lot of them in to Cincinnati. And even though we don't know which one they're going to draft, and they may not even draft a guy they brought in, I think at the end of the day, they have shown enough interest that they are going to draft somebody probably in the first few rounds. And I think the fact that they traded for the kid from Jacksonville kind of says that, yes, we recognize we do need help in that position. At the absolute worst, we're going to have him. At the best, we're going to have, who knows, be it a Taco Charlton, Tim Williams, Derek Barnett, somebody. So I think that's probably the first thing. It's very interesting, the running backs they've brought in, because you look at Jeremy Hill being kind of has that 1 year left. You don't know what you have with Bernard. They seem kind of surprised that Burkhead left, which you surprised because they weren't really going to pay him a whole lot. So I think they're, as much as you can play your hand without really playing your hand, I think that they're showing that. So, I mean, in theory, you can pick pretty much one guy from every position. But I think we can probably be safe to say that in those first few rounds, you're probably getting a running back, probably getting an edge rusher, probably not getting an offensive lineman, despite what the fans may want.
Yeah.
So if you agree, am I crazy?
No, I think there's a handful of positions that are in play. Unfortunately, one could argue that this year is a big year for the Bengals needing offensive line help, even though they used 2 top picks a couple of years ago on tackles who are pegged to be their starting left and right tackles this year. They've struggled since when they've been on the field, but be that as it may, they're going to start. And you lose Zeitler, you lose Whitworth, and you kind of say, okay, well, they need offensive line help. Unfortunately, this class is not the strongest class for offensive linemen, and especially tackle. You could say, Cam Robinson, that could be a top 10 guy, and he's maybe the top guy in the draft, but there's a lot of questions there. So I agree with you. I don't know if offensive line is in play high. I think they might go interior linemen more in the middle rounds, maybe a swing guard center, swing guard tackle. I agree with you though. I think if you look at the top positions that should be not only available, but that they want to target are probably going to be wide receiver, linebacker, edge rusher, tight end, and running back. I think those are maybe the 5 guys within those 5 positions in the first 3 rounds that the team is looking at. And as you look at the mock drafts, whether it's from Joe Goodberry, Mel Kiper, or the writers at Cincy Jungle, we've put together mocks that that there's a lot of common names that seem to be linked to the Bengals at those positions, and it depends on the round and how people see that they fit. Everybody seems to have their taste in certain players. There are guys that there are a lot of people that think that a lot of players from 9 to about 20 overall are kind of the same type of talent. And then there are those who kind of say that there's some very polarizing players in this draft, be it on-field talent, off-field problems, that sort of thing. So do you agree with the sentiment that the Bengals, if they were at 9 or if they were at 15 or 16, they might be getting similar value regardless?
I would have to totally agree, which I think is one of the most frustrating things about this draft, is that the level of the blue chip players seems to drop pretty quickly once you get to about the 5th or 6th pick. And the problem is the next tier, or the guys who are like the upper tier, absolute need for the Bengals. So I think that's kind of one of the frustrating things, is that most other years, being number 9, you'd feel pretty confident, hey, we're going to get a pretty good guy. But if you look at this year, it's just like, you'd prefer to trade down. The problem is there's no trade up, because that usually means a quarterback or some sort of elite player that you can't get later, and that just doesn't seem to be the case. So they're kind of stuck in a position where probably no one's going to want to trade up with them. Kind of the last time they had number 9 when they drafted Keith Rivers, no one wanted to trade up to that 9 spot. So you're left making a pick, and the guy they could have got that year at 9 was comparable to what they could have gotten at 15 or 20. You kind of see that this year. I mean, some of the guys we've talked about at 9, guys like Reuben Foster or Mike Williams or Corey Davis, are guys that you see in some mocks drop to 15 or lower, either because of injury concerns or other guys moving ahead of them. So yeah, it's one of those things where there's a grouping of 10, 20 guys who are all kind of the same. You get your pick of them, but at that point you'd prefer to get the best value, and the best value is just kind of moving to the bottom of that and just getting whichever one's left over, because it means you're getting additional picks or something. And yeah, it's just unfortunate unless someone falls unexpectedly, kind of like Laramie Tinsel did last year. So if we get something crazy like that, let's say Garrett has a picture of him, with drugs or something right as the draft starts, that would be a good chance to be at number 9. But barring anything crazy like that, it's going to be a great year to have that 9 pick.
Yeah, note to the rookie prospects, no Instagram pics of you wearing a gas mask this year, please. That'll hurt you. Like you said, we'll be talking about running back in just a little bit here. Like offensive line, quarterback is kind of a weak class this year as well. And that is kind of a bummer for the Bengals at 9, because usually those teams maybe in the low teens, middle of the first round would want to leapfrog and get up there and want to, give out some higher picks. And that could benefit the Bengals if they're wanting to move back and even collect more picks. That might not be the case. This will go into our mock draft now. This one's tough to figure out because, you mentioned Laramie Tunsil last year. A guy like that who could be falling, that was once pegged to the Bengals at number 9 is Reuben Foster, a guy who had shoulder surgery. Then he had a weird blow up at the combine and was sent home. And now there's reports that his shoulder hasn't currently healed. And there's not really a true timetable as to when that's going to come, when he's going to come around from that. Probably should still be able to play as a rookie, I would think, but that's going to hurt his stock, and it's going to be interesting to see if he falls out of the top 10, even out of the first round. There's some rumors of that happening. So that being said, Scott, I mean, let's kind of do a rough 3-round mock draft based on the positions we see. Last year, I got to pat myself on the back a little bit. When I did a mock draft for Cincy Jungle, I did select William Jackson and Tyler Boyd for the Bengals, but I did that in rounds 2 and 3, not round 1, 1 and 2, I should say. So I was a little accurate last year, just a round off on those guys. I doubt I'll be as accurate this year, but think the Bengals in terms of player and position. What do you see them doing in the first 3 rounds this year?
I'd say if I were to, put on my guessing hat is probably the best way to say it. With all the names they've thrown out, since they tend to be a very big value team, I just can't see them drafting any of the defensive ends that high. I don't think they're going to go after Barnett. I don't think they'll go after Charlton or McKinley or anyone. So I'm going to eliminate them. And I thought there was a very interesting interview with Duke Tobin's dad on Bengals.com, which I think was also aired on the radio. And he said one very interesting thing that I took away from that I think has stuck with his son is the idea that they draft people from winning programs. A lot of the teams they draft kids from, whatever level it is, they have a lot of success. So to me, I think that means that someone like Barnett wouldn't be at number 9 because Tennessee hasn't been a big winning program. For whatever reason, they tend to prefer guys, the idea being, well, if your team was good, you were good. The edge rushers off the table. I also don't think they're going with Foster, despite their love of the Alabama program. I think they've probably enough by going after guys from big programs who are surrounded by talent, where you're not really seeing that guy's talent, plus with the injury concerns. Although you could redshirt him, I just don't see them going that direction. I don't think they value linebacker that high. Most of the linebackers tend to be undrafted free agents or later guys. The one exception, or I guess the 2 exceptions being Rivers and Malaluga. neither of them was really that great. They had better production from guys like Honey Jones, Vincent Gray, so on and so on. So that being said, I think that leaves them, as far as the best value, one of the two wide receivers, either Davis from Western Michigan or Mike Williams from Clemson. And we can go 2 weeks ago, I just said Mike Williams hands down. Since then, I've watched a lot more video of Davis, and the more I watch him, the more I'm impressed with him. He has strong hands. He catches the ball with his hands. He gets great separation, which is one thing Williams doesn't do as well. Williams just basically overpowers people and gets all the jump balls because he has an insane jump radius and can beat you one-on-one when the ball is right there. So I think when it's all said and done, I'm just going to say, because he's a guy I have really become more interested in as a prospect, is Davis, the wide receiver, round 1. And I know they just drafted Boyd last year. They just drafted Brandon LaFell. But I think based on the value, based on who falls to them, I'm going to say Davis, the wide receiver, in the first round. The second round, I'd love to say Joe Mixon. I'm a huge fan of this podcast. I'm a huge fan of him. I don't think he's going to be there at their second-round pick. So I think they missed out on him, so I'm thinking at the second-round pick, they're probably going to draft. As much as I'd love to go a different position, I'm going to say someone like Dalvin Cook fall. It's going to be someone like that someone who shouldn't fall, but you just, for whatever reason, didn't expect him to be there and he falls to them. So I'm going to say either someone like him or Kamara, someone who can possibly play all 3 downs, but can catch and run. So I would say Chris Davis, first round, Dalvin Cook, second, or not Chris, sorry, whatever his name is. Davis,
Corey
first
Davis.
round. Corey Davis. Second round, I'm going to say either Kamara or Dalvin Cook. And then third round, I'm going to whoever. Since it's such a deep class, I'm going to say one of those guys that falls to him, either probably one of those small school kids, like either the kid from Youngstown State or the kid from from Ohio, Basham or someone like that. Someone who a lot of fans like, oh yeah, I've heard of him. So that's my 3. I'd be very interested next week to see that I get all 3 wrong. But as of right now, I'll just say Davis, Cook, and then one of the depth of edge rusher players if I were to pick 3 right now.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously that's kind of part of the process is this is kind of a crapshoot, and really only the Bengals front office truly knows how their board is falling and who they have at those spots. I'm gonna give you some names, and then I think there's a couple of dark horse possibilities as well. I look at pick number 9. And I have a post coming up on Cincy Jungle. I mean, I get the needs on defense, edge rusher and linebacker being the biggest. I see a lot of edge rush talent that a team could get, in the later of the first, top of the second, and even into the third round. Some of those guys are a little bit more project guys, but there's a lot of talent there. And some of the guys who may fall to them, a Solomon Thomas, a Jonathan Allen, that sort of thing. While I love the versatility of those guys, I don't know that they really truly fit the Bengals defensive scheme as a guy that. I think the size matches up, but something tells me that those might be a little bit more 3-4 type of defense guys. But it would be interesting to see if some of those guys who are projected in that top 5, if they end up making it to number 9 that are defensive linemen, if the Bengals spring for one. I think what I was saying about the post is I think that the Bengals should be looking at a little more offense this year. And I think you look at the end of the tail end of last year's schedule and how things played out, how the scores played out, that sort of thing. And you say, okay, obviously this team needs something where they can score some points and score more points. I mean, at the end of the year, it was almost with regularity that they were in the teens in terms of points scored. So I think I'm going to agree with you on the Corey Davis pick. Personally, I think I like Mike Williams a little more, but I do get the upside with Corey Davis. It worries me that he has not, officially run or did much of a workout either at the combine or a pro day, but I do think that is a guy that they will probably look very hard at. One dark horse guy that I've kind of started looking at for the first time, and this goes against, and you're right about the interview with the big school guys, the successful school guys. They like guys who come from winning programs and they bring that winning attitude and winning culture to the Bengals, and it makes sense. But one kind of, I don't want to say he's a smaller school guy, but it's definitely not known as a football powerhouse, is Temple's Hassan Reddick, and he's a guy who has been rising up draft boards rapidly. He can rush off the edge. At Temple, he also played a little bit outside linebacker, range kind of player. Could be a guy that the Bengals look at number 9. It's a little bit of a reach there, I think, but he's pegged to kind of go maybe mid-first. But he kind of maybe kills two birds with one stone, if you will, if he can show that he can play outside linebacker and put his hand in the dirt to rush the passer. The Bengals haven't had success in drafting those types of players and making them into quality pros over the years, but I think he's the most talented of those players that they've tried that with. So he could be a dark horse pick at number 9 for me. I think it's a little high personally, but like I said, I think he can maybe two needs for you on defense, given his skill set if he ends up working out. Like I said, I think Corey Davis is probably that pick at number 9. I agree with you on Joe Mixon at the top of the second round. I know you went with Cook, but I think they're going to do what they can, whether it's at the top of the second, move back into the first, whatever it may be. I think they want him. They've shown a ton of interest in him, and even with all the off-field stuff, I think they like him. There is a report that came out today about some more issues that have sprung up about a high school issue where he supposedly beat up another young woman in high school. That could cause him to tumble a bit more, maybe stick in that second round. We'll see. But I still think he's going to go relatively high, even though some teams have supposedly taken him off their draft boards. So I'll say Davis, Mixon. And then I think at that point you look at defensive line and kind of what's left there. I wonder if a guy like a Terrell Basham of Ohio is going to be there in the top of the third. Maybe not. He might be one of those guys that, in the second round, middle of the second round, high second round, a team says, let's take a chance on this guy. But he's a small school guy. He's got a good skill set. Needs some polishing, but does seem to have a pretty good motor and skill set. Might be a little bit of a pipe dream in terms of him being there in the top of the third, but I think that him or a player like him will be there, and that's the route they take after going offense in the first two rounds. I will say this: if the Bengals don't maybe go Reddick in the first round and they don't go wide receiver early in the third round, I think that's when they do go wide receiver. They've drafted a number of players in the third round under Marvin Lewis at that position: Mohamed Sanu, Chris Henry, and a lot of those guys have ended up being pretty productive for them. And at that point, at the top of the third, the guys you'd probably be looking at, if they didn't go wide receiver early on, are probably Texas A&M's Josh Reynolds, USC's Juju Smith-Schuster, maybe D.D. Westbrook from Oklahoma. He probably won't be there, though. And there's a couple of other names there.
I've heard recently, I guess his interviews have been horrible as far as D.D. If he was
okay. I had admittedly not heard that. So that, and that's the thing with this draft in particular. It seems like a lot of people, and it happens this time of year anyways, the past couple of weeks, there's a lot of rumors, a lot of mudslinging, and a lot of things, unfortunately for these young kids, that stuff gets brought up from their past that may or may not have even happened or happened a long time ago, and they're trying to get past it and they get dinged for it. But inevitably, there's always someone that, we as fans, the mock drafters, all of these people, they sit here and they say, these are guys that could be, that should be first round, second round guys, and all of a sudden they fall to the third round. We saw it last year with Andrew Billings, prime example, a guy that was pegged as a late first round pick, and the Bengals got him in the fourth round. So It's not totally common, but it happens. And so those are our picks. Again, recap: 3-round Bengals mock for Scott was Corey Davis, Dalvin Cook, and who was your third pick, Scott?
It was a very ambiguous best of the left or best of the rest of the edge rushers, be it someone like Walker from Florida State, Basham from Ohio, whoever the best one is, it's still there.
Gotcha. So you and I are kind of on the same wavelength here. I went with Corey Davis with the possibility of Hassan Reddick being a dark horse guy. Joe Mixon, I think, is that second round guy, and then a guy like Terrell Basham in the third as well. If they kind of go Reddick in the first round, then I see a wide receiver like Reynolds, Smith-Schuster, maybe Westbrook, guys like that could be there in the top of the third that they could grab. I want to welcome in Connor Howe, and your timing, even though you've joined us late the past couple of weeks, buddy, your timing has been impeccable because we are just finishing up our Bengals 3-round mock draft. And just so you know, Connor, we made an announcement at the beginning of the show. We're going to try and do a live draft show next Thursday night. We're not going to do the Wednesday night show. We're going to try and do a Thursday night show around the time that we normally come on, and kind of go through that top 10 and obviously talk about the number 9 pick when the Bengals go there. Obviously, if they trade back, trade up, that's going to be something to discuss as well. But just so you know, buddy, you can pencil that in your calendar. Quickly, Connor, if you can.
Yeah,
well, not
I got
quickly.
one already.
Not quickly, but first of all, before you get to your mock, talk about the positions the grouping of positions you see the Bengals taking within those first few rounds and why, and then talk about your Bengals 3-round mock that you have for the team this year.
Okay, well, I think that what Paul Gunther said earlier this offseason at some point about how the team is going to probably or I don't know if he made a specific statement directly talking about it, but he basically insinuated that the Bengals were going to take multiple defensive ends within the first few rounds. So I would guess they're going to take multiple defensive ends within the first 4 rounds. That's the biggest takeaway I have. I encourage everyone who's watching or who listens to go check out Andy Benoit on Twitter. He's one of my, I said it last week, he's one of my favorite draft people. Today he just he'll do this thing where he watches a team's film and then he'll just rally off a series of tweets about whatever's happening with that team in his opinion. And he again doubled down that he thinks the defensive end position is the biggest position of importance for the Bengals. He also said that he believes receiver, contrary to popular opinion with Bengals fans, which I also agree with, that I agree hit with his opinion, not the popular belief, that receiver, while it's a popular position, might be more a position of importance in terms of depth rather than the Bengals needing a guy to help at the top. So I understand the Corey Davis pick, but I also think that I don't know. The way I take a risk on a guy like Corey Davis. So I'll say defensive end. I think like additional depth at certain positions, receiver, linebacker would be nice. Another tackle at some point will be nice, but like, is that top round talent? Probably not. Running back could probably go high. I don't know. I think it could also go low. But I think the only thing I really feel like I know is that the Bengals should, not will, take a defensive end at some point in the first 2 or 3 rounds. But as we've seen in years past, even when it's felt like defensive end is by far the biggest position of need, the Bengals completely take everyone by surprise, go elsewhere. They took Eifert in 2013 when no one thought that was going to happen. They took cornerbacks in 2014 and 2016. And so, yeah, with all that being said, my 3-round mock is it's actually I'm posting a 7-rounder on Cincy Jungle tomorrow. Spoiler alert, but
spoiler alert. There you go.
Yeah, it's kind of reward for all the fans who listen to the show. But round 1, I picked Malik McDowell, the defensive end out of Michigan State, which is probably going to be controversial. I took in round 2, which I don't know if the Bengals are going to take linebacker really high, but I think that if they do, they'll wait till the 2nd or 3rd round. They probably won't take Reuben Foster, and I picked Raekwon McMillan. Out of Ohio State. They visited him. I don't put a ton of stock into the pre-draft visits, but they talked to him twice, and he I don't know, the whole Ray Maluga being a second rounder thing, whenever that happened, it seems like it just kind of makes sense for the Bengals. He's a guy that kind of fits what they're looking in the position, and that could help. And then round three, it's kind of like you, or at least Scott, with the whole best of the rest thing. But I took another defensive end. I took Jordan Willis out of Kansas State. He just kind of doubling down on the whole Paul Guenther talking about defensive ends, and also how they aren't necessarily holding to that standard of tall, long defensive ends, but also they could potentially work in a guy like Chris Smith, who they just traded for, or Jordan Willis, if they drafted him.
So you went defense first 3 picks, correct?
Yeah, which also doesn't really happen a lot, is worth mentioning. They went offense in the first 3, and I think it was the year they took Oboihi and Fisher. They also took, I think, Croft in round 3, or an offensive player. But aside from that, it's
Dawson maybe.
Yeah, aside from that, it's been 2 of one, then 1 of the other in like almost every single draft. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to be all defense, but I think it's just the way the board fell in this mock draft that I did. If I did one that was just me picking names from each round that I like, it'd be different.
Yeah. So you went Malik McDowell, Raekwon McMillan, and the 3rd pick again was
Jordan Willis.
Jordan. Okay. So you don't think then that the addition of Wallace Gilberry, the rare, semi-rare trade the Bengals made for
I don't think either one of those things really mean anything now.
Okay. Fair enough. And like we said, that edge rusher is a need for the Bengals, and I think in some capacity, whether it's 3rd round or 1st round or what have you, all 3 of us have the Bengals taking some sort of an edge rushing talent in our mock drafts. A couple of comments in the chat room. There is Amun Kalikas wrote, they're not going to go linebacker with the Minter signing. They're not going to go wide receiver with the 2 draft picks. I'm assuming from last year, Tyler Boyd and Cody Core, and LaFell re-signing. They won't go edge because they're dumb. So OJ Howard will be the pick because Eifert won't re-sign. That's the prediction there. Waldo, a show regular, talking about Forrest Lamp, could play right guard or left tackle. He's obviously known as one of the best offensive linemen in this class. And there's a couple of other people who need to get Corey Davis. Waldo also asks, and this is a good segue into our next topic. But before we get to there, Waldo asked, does anybody like Curtis Samuel, the wide receiver running back out of Ohio State? Connor, your thoughts on him?
Me?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. I just don't really see it. I think we kind of talked about last week. The Bengals it seems like they have their mold at receiver, which wouldn't be Samuel. And I don't know if he really wants to play running back or if the Bengals see him as a running back. There's a lot of guys in the draft, and I just don't think that him and the Bengals are going to line up.
Okay. See, personally, and I'll get to you in a sec, Scott. Personally, and you bleed scarlet and gray, right? So personally with Curtis Samuel, if Hugh Jackson was still the Bengals offensive coordinator, where he's creative, he was really an Andrew Hawkins guy. And there were ways that both he and Jay Gruden used Andrew Hawkins kind of out of the backfield with shovel passes and end arounds and things like that. They used him in little short routes, yards after the catch plays. That would be something I could see where Curtis Samuel makes sense. Unfortunately, at least from what we saw last year with Ken Zampese, the creativity isn't as high with him as it is with Hugh Jackson. So that's why I don't know if Curtis Samuel would be a pick for the Bengals. Maybe if Hugh Jackson was there and could bang the table a little bit for a guy that can bring some athleticism, some speed, and they can do some different things with him, I think maybe then he could be a pick. That's me personally. Like the guy, I am concerned about, where are you going to play him in the NFL? But, if he's talented enough and you got a creative offensive coordinator, I think you make room for him. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I think he's kind of one of those tweener players, but having seen a lot of Ohio State games, he was a huge chunk of their offense this year after losing Ezekiel Elliott, losing Mike Thomas, and their quarterback JT Barrett struggling to throw the ball. He was pretty much the only receiver they had the whole season. And other than their young power running back, he was pretty much the whole offense this year. I mean, he is a great receiver out of the backfield, probably up there with Christian McCaffrey as far as the top receivers from the backfield. He's not going to be a 3-down back, but he started as a running back until they moved him to wide. I think he played mostly wide receiver just because they really didn't have an else to throw the ball to who could get separation. And he's very shifty, very elusive. He has amazing speed. I mean, I think whatever he had at his pro day or combine was insane as far as straight line speed. But it's not just straight line, 40-time speed. It's actual game speed. He is a great all-around player. It's just a matter of, can you utilize him correctly?
Yeah.
Can you give him, 5 or 10 carries a game? Can you find a way to get him, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 targets a game? And some of the things that Giovanni Bernard does, he's probably a faster, more elusive version of Bernard. But I don't know where he'll go. He'd probably go before they would take him. He's kind of like a Braxton Miller who went to Houston last year, but just a more polished, refined version. Miller was basically very elusive with the ball in his hands, but just didn't have a position. This guy has more of a position. So I'd see him as a kind of a better prospect than Miller last year, who went a little higher than he probably should have. So, yeah, I wouldn't complain if we had him. I just don't think it's, like Connor said, I don't think it's going to line up because I think someone's going to take him before the Bengals would.
Yeah. You have to create plays for him in the playbook. That's the bottom line. You have to make sure that you would create certain plays and, make sure that you get him a certain number of snaps, be it from the backfield or wide receiver. Good question from Waldo. Great comments in the YouTube chat. What do you guys think about our host 3-round Bengals mock drafts? Are we idiots? Are we geniuses? Are we somewhere in the middle? Let us know. You can get in touch with the show via email, theobinsider@gmail.com, on Twitter @BengalsOBI. You can also subscribe to all of our content on our SoundCloud channel. So be subscribed to that as well as our YouTube channel. We do this show live every episode on our YouTube channel, as well as at Cincy Jungle. You can catch all of our content there, and then we're also on iTunes as well. So download our stuff today and let us know your thoughts, your questions. We want to answer those, and obviously appreciate the interaction in the chat room that we get every week now. It's pretty awesome. Just a little side note, I did get an email, or excuse me, a comment from one of our listeners who actually appears to reside in Scotland. So this show is international, fellas. It's pretty cool that we have Bengals fans that tune into this show all around the world. And it's cool that the Bengals themselves have fans all around the world. So thanks to the listeners. Keep tuning in. We love having you join us. As I mentioned, Waldo's question is a good segue to our next kind of segment / draft question. Now you look at it, and obviously we talked about the Bengals potentially looking at running back as one of their top picks this year, whether it's at number 9, if that's Leonard Fournette or whoever that may be, Christian McCaffrey even maybe, whether that's in the second round, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, a lot of possibilities, but there seems to be a little bit of a changing of the guard around the NFL as it comes to the valuing of running backs. Now, in the 90s and early 2000s, you wanted those big plotting running backs, those guys you can give the ball 30, 40 times a game. Your Emmitt Smiths, your Sean Alexanders, the list is on and on. Eddie George, all these big guys that toted the rock for a team a bunch of times a game, and you can kind of 3 yards and cloud of dust your way to a win, I guess. But this year, maybe it's because teams kind of saw what happened with the Falcons and the Patriots, the two teams in last year's Super Bowl, that they have so many versatile backs that can help out in the passing game, can do a lot of different things to help out a team. But it seems like this year there's a lot of talk of potentially a handful of running backs that can go in the first round. We're talking about Fournette, possibly Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey, maybe even Joe Mixon if teams are that high on him. There's a bunch of players who could potentially go in the first round and should be able to help a team right away, depending on how they use them. So I guess I want to ask the question to you guys, whether it's the Bengals or just a national perception, has after leagues valued the running backs in the 90s and early 2000s, then the NFL changed into a quote unquote passing league, and teams rarely even used a second round pick on running backs. If you remember, Giovanni Bernard in 2012 was the first running back off the board that year in the second round. So now it appears that there's a lot of talk about the running back position kind of being in vogue again. So Scott, I'll start with you. I guess the question to you is this the NFL kind of changing its stripes again and saying, we like these versatile running backs, we value the position once again? Or is it just because this class has a bunch of star players and this class is kind of an anomaly that a lot of these guys may go higher than many other previous drafts?
I'm going to say it's the latter. I think it's not that the NFL is moving more to running back. If anything, I think they're continuing to move farther away. And I think the versatility, the multiple running backs, the specialization of it, I think it speaks to lowering the value of them instead of increasing it. But I think this year you just don't have the elite prospects at the other positions, which means that if you're grading players as far as their overall grade, guys who, as far as this year goes, the running backs are some of the higher graded players just because you don't have, those elite quarterbacks. You don't have Cam Newton, Andrew Luck, Robert Griffin III. You don't have the top quarterbacks up there. You don't have a whole lot of cornerbacks up there. We've already talked about offensive line. You don't have that up there. Probably no offensive lineman is going to go in the top 15. There's no left tackle up there. You don't have the run on those positions. Even some of their positions, you don't have a lot of big defensive tackles. And even edge rusher outside of Myles Garrett, you have a lot of questions. So I think the positions teams would prefer to go, you just don't have that those quality blue chip guys up there, which is why you're seeing so many safeties going high, which is a position that I think the NFL doesn't value as much unless they can cover, because you don't have as many guys running, so you don't need that big, David Fulcher kind of big guy up front. But you have multiple safeties possibly going in the first 10 picks. You have a whole bunch of running backs going high, and it's because there's just not, at least from my perspective, it's because you don't have the positions that folks want.
Yeah, and this, aside from the first round talent, running back is one of the deepest positions in this draft regardless. You could be getting guys in those middle rounds that, in previous drafts might be second, third round picks, but maybe you get them in the fourth or fifth because this is a deep class and there's so many star players at the top of the draft at that position. Edge rusher is also very deep, even though, as you mentioned, there are questions at some of those positions. Connor, I want to ask you the same question and kind of add the caveat. Is this also because these guys this year seem to be a bit more able to play three downs, be it catching, blocking, running? Is this year the anomaly that there's just going to be a lot of high picks because of the talent at the position? Or do you think that, teams value, even though I mentioned the Patriots and Falcons and the guys they used were mid-round picks, but do you think teams are beginning to value that position a little more highly if they can get things out of them in the passing game aside from the running game?
Yeah, I think it's actually it's an interesting dichotomy because you have, like you said, the teams that, even though you see the Patriots and they are still working out of tandems and all this stuff, and teams are definitely swaying away from the three down type of running backs who just carry the whole team on their shoulders. Though there's the exceptions of like the Ezekiel Elliott's of the world, David Johnson, who can still do it. But I think it's interesting because you see like Benjamin Albright, for example, who's he's had a lot of good scoops. He just tweeted out like right before this show, Christian McCaffrey's going top 10, put it in ink. And someone asked him, well, does that mean he's going ahead of Leonard Fournette? And he said, no, like Leonard Fournette is going to be gone before that. So there could be potentially 2 running backs off the board before the Bengals even make their pick, which for Bengals fans is great. But I think in this, context, it's interesting that teams, despite their, I still think that the teams, even though they're not paying running backs anything, and that running backs as individuals are definitely less valuable to teams, the position itself is still very valuable, and teams love to use them. The Patriots, for example, they just signed Rex Burkhead to that, what was it, $3 or $4 million deal, is the most they've paid plus, I'm pretty sure. And then they just today, I'm pretty sure maybe yesterday, signed Mike Gillislee, who's on the Bills, to a restriction that the Bills probably are not going to match because it seemed like they were paying him a lot more than the Bills were willing to pay him. That's, I think, $4 million this year, and then $2 million, I think, next year, something like that. So the Patriots are going to be spending a good, they're doubling down on the running back budget. They're probably multiplying it by a factor of 2 or 3 for the upcoming season. And their running back, I mean, LeGarrette Blount led the NFL in rushing touchdowns last year. So, and they had Deion Lewis and James White, and so they still have Deion Lewis. Deion Lewis is going to be the number 3 or 4 guy on the team this year, which is crazy because just last year people were saying he's one of the most versatile backs in the NFL. So I think to answer your question, I mean, it's a little bit of both. I mean, there's players in this year's draft like McCaffrey, Fournette, Davis, Mixon. No matter how much you nitpick these guys, Cook, they're talented. They're people are nitpicking the heck out of Fournette and trying to say he's Jeremy Hill, but Jeremy Hill in college as a prospect was one of the best running backs that we've seen in quite some time as a running back. So, maybe he's different in the NFL, maybe he's not, but all these guys are still really immensely talented. And teams are very, enviable of these players because, like we're seeing, maybe this what Albright's hearing in that 2 players are going to be drafted at the running back position before the Bengals might not be true. But he's been right a lot, and even if he's not, I mean, teams still really like the position and they value it a lot. So I don't know, it's interesting, but I think to answer your question, teams still do value the position, just not in a way that they used to. Whereas you used to have the guys like Adrian Peterson carrying the ball 3 downs every time, just teams pounding it up the middle. I think they still value it, and they just value flexibility, depth, and versatility a lot more than they used to.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Patriots, obviously. I think they just re-signed James White. You might have mentioned that. They re-signed James White to an extension. You mentioned Deion Lewis. They sent the tender to Gillislee, and then they also obviously signed Rex Burkhead. So it's funny that not only LeGarrette Blount, who is a very productive player and kind of gets these rental deals with them, is I believe he remains unsigned at this point. But they still invested pretty heavily in the position, at least in free agency. I'm going to fence right here, fellas. I'm going to say it's both. I think, in the mid to late 2000s when teams kind of started to devalue the position, I think part of that was because the rookie wage scale wasn't in place, and you see some of these running backs that potentially you only get 3-4 productive years out of them because of the beating they take. Well, now that the rookie wage scale is in place and players in the draft are much more affordable, I think teams are a little more apt if they see a guy that could potentially play at least 2 downs, maybe 3, to use a first-round pick on him. And this year, this draft seems to be filled with guys who can do that. Everybody has their taste. Some people love Leonard Fournette. Some people don't. Mixon is one of the more complete backs in the draft, but he's got a ton of issues. Kamara, productive, I should say athletic, exciting. College production wasn't really equivalent to that. And then, there's Cook, who is very exciting as well. Couple of off-field issues. And also, teams also probably look at the amount of touches they had in college as they come into the draft because they want to try and maximize the deal they get with them. But I think if you get a productive guy in the first round that can give you, 4 or 5 years in that first rookie deal, I think that's why teams are a little more apt now to use a higher pick on a running back in these recent drafts than maybe a few years prior. And, unfortunately for some of these starting guys, as free agency comes after their first contract, they don't really get a lot of the love that some other positions do just because of the amount of touches they tend to get. but that's another story. So I think it's both. I think there's a little bit of a changing of attitude around the league in terms of running backs, and I also think that this draft is loaded at the position, and if some of these guys, a lot of the edge rushers, a lot of the defensive linemen, maybe even a wide receiver goes in front of the Bengals, and you're sitting there with Fournette, McCaffrey, maybe another wide receiver, it's going to be interesting to see if they want to go offense, if running back is truly on the table for them at number 9, and how that'll shape their offense for 2017 in the next couple of years. Speaking of this year's draft class, guys, we mentioned earlier the quarterback class in this draft is a little bit weak. The consensus best quarterback, I guess, in this draft is Mitch Trubisky. Deshaun Watson is also up there. A couple of other guys that are intriguing, but for the most part, there doesn't seem to be, as Scott mentioned, and Andrew Luck, a Peyton Manning or anything like that in this draft. It kind of got me thinking. Now, granted, we have the ability of foresight, we could be able to look back and everything. But as we sit here today, and we've seen what Andy Dalton has done from 2011 through 2016, a couple of Pro Bowls, 5 playoff appearances, that sort of thing. Do you think where do you think he would fall if he were to come out in this year's draft? Now, if you remember, in the 2011 draft, he went all the way to the beginning of the second round, and he went behind guys like Jake Locker, Christian Ponder, Blaine Gabbert, and then Kaepernick went right behind him. So obviously behind Cam Newton, he's the second best quarterback in that draft. Where do you think he would fall this year because of the weak class, Scott?
Yeah, I think if he was in the draft this year, I think he'd still kind of be where he was, kind of that late first, mid-second grade, because outside of Cam Newton, I think a lot of the prospects this year are kind of comparable to what you had the year Andy Dalton came out in 2011. He is kind of your Blaine Gabbert type, the guy who has all the intangibles. He seems to have all the tools, just hasn't put it together long enough as far in a NFL season. Someone like Jake Locker is kind of like your Deshaun Kaiser, guy who was fairly athletic but not very accurate, had some throwing issues. And then you have a guy like the cannon arm. The Patrick Mahomes is kind of like your Ryan Mallett. And I think if you look at the guys this year, some of them compare, I think, very favorably or comparable to some of the guys that came out when he came out. So I think if Dalton as a prospect, and if we go back then, some of he is someone who can step in from day one. He can play. He doesn't have a strong arm. He seems more of a game manager with an upside of quarterback, maybe Chad Pennington. Sorry, not Peyton Manning. Chad Pennington type. Can step in. He's not going to hurt you, but probably isn't going to carry you. Has done well against decent competition. Had just come off that big Rose Bowl win against Wisconsin when he was drafted. Showing he was kind of a leader kind of mentality. I think if he was in this year's draft, he'd probably be in that same situation. He'd be maybe slightly behind someone like a Deshaun Watson, but ahead of maybe someone like a Davis Webb or a Brad Kyatt. So I think he'd end the day, if he were put in this year's draft, I just think he'd probably be in that same situation. He'd be kind of like where, and I think Christian Ponder did the same thing. I think those two guys were probably interchangeable in 2011. That probably end of the first, early second. It just depends on how many guys are taken ahead of it.
Yeah, and it's a fair point again because we have the benefit of seeing what Dalton has done as a pro. But you look back to the scouting reports back in 2011. Accurate, good leader. His stock really rose with that the win in the Rose Bowl, but before the draft there. I think maybe he was kind of a third round pickish type of thing, and then guys started watching more tape, and he started rising up. Dalton did, that is, rising up boards. I like that you brought up Mallett because for those of us who remember, there was a rumor that apparently Marvin Lewis and Jay Gruden had to talk Mike Brown out of drafting Ryan Mallett at the top of the second round instead of Andy Dalton. Who knows where the Bengals would have been over the past couple of years had they gone that route. And Lewis and Gruden got their way, obviously, and Dalton's been their guy. Connor, you've been a bit more on the on Dalton's side than maybe some other fans, especially for those of you who follow Connor on Twitter. He really likes him some Dalton. I don't know what you think about where he might land. Personally speaking, I think he'd probably be a guy that maybe a team would trade up into the early 20s, late teens, maybe one of those teams that are in the second round, a team like maybe the Denver Broncos or Houston Texans or something like that would trade up that have kind of a quarterback need, the Jets, and maybe he'd probably be in the 20s for me, maybe slightly higher personally. What do you think? Do you think he would be the best quarterback in this draft, or do you think he would still be kind of right around where he was drafted in 2011?
Are we talking about Dalton as a prospect who we have the foresight to be like, okay, this is what he's going to do over the next 6 years or whatever?
I mean, kind of.
Or is it like him? Like
it's kind of blend of scouting report from 2011 as well as he's been the second most successful quarterback in the 2011 draft to date. This is a weak class. Do you think that his skill set would have propelled him as one of, if not the top quarterback in this year's draft?
I mean, if I feel like it's slander kind of to talk about Dalton. Like if we knew what Dalton would become back in his time, then he would have gotten drafted. I mean, I saw a redraft of the 2011 draft like a week or so ago, and even though I get like it was a stacked class and there were a lot of good players, it was crazy that people didn't have Andy Dalton picked higher in the draft. I mean, I'm not going to pretend in front like he's the best quarterback in the NFL, but at the same time, he's a guy who when things have gone right has been a great quarterback. Past 2 years, he's thrown 43 touchdowns, 15 picks. His pass rating was 91.8 this year, 106.3 last year. He's visually improved every single year of his career. He has one losing season, and I know QB wins aren't really a stat, but that is like worth mentioning because he inherited one of the worst teams in the entire NFL.
Yeah, it's a big barometer for NFL quarterbacks for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a by any means gospel, but I mean, when you talk about a guy who plays for the Bengals, it's definitely worth mentioning. And then you have I don't know, people are going to credit his success to Green, but then he puts up good numbers even when Green's not in the game, and people still for whatever reason don't like Dalton. I mean, I get why people don't like him, like in terms of there's things that he's not perfect at, but at the end of the day, you look at numbers like the past 10 Super Bowl champion quarterbacks, only Joe Flacco was a first rounder. It just doesn't really make sense that people are saying that they wouldn't want Dalton in the first round of a draft when you have a guy who is going to lead you to multiple playoff appearances, if not 5 and 6 years. He's a good player and he knows what he does. I mean, he has obviously strengths and obviously weaknesses. He's going to do things well. He's also going to do things that frustrate you, like roll out of the pocket and force a pass or just throw a pass away as soon as he smells pressure. But at the end of the day, like I just feel like I'm reiterating. I mean, he's a good quarterback. He threw for 4,200 yards last year without AJ Green for half the season. So, and he didn't have Eifert either. So I mean, I don't know. I think it's so crazy that people still don't think Andy Dalton is a good quarterback. I mean, you don't have to love Dalton, but what he did last year without Green for half the year, Eifert for the other half of the year, it was impressive, and he didn't have an offensive line pretty much the whole year too. I mean, so I don't know. I like him. I think if teams had the foresight to be like, this is a quarterback who's gonna become what Andy Dalton would become, then they would, I think, no questions asked, draft him within. Cleveland would take him right now at where are they at 12? They'd take him at 12 easy.
Yeah. I agree, and if you weren't going to mention the offensive line from last year, I definitely was. Real quickly then, since this might be, I guess it might be a little bit of a skewed question to your point, Connor. Just real quick, what about A.J. McCarron? Do you think he would be higher rated than a fifth-round pick this year?
I mean, he'd be higher than a fifth-rounder, but I think Bengal fans immensely overvalue what he brings to the table. I mean, people compare him to Jimmy Garoppolo a lot. But I think the difference between Garoppolo and McCarron is that when Garoppolo on tape, when you watch him, was one of the like he looked like a top NFL quarterback when he was on tape. And McCarron had some nice plays here and there when he was playing for the Bengals, but I mean, he really didn't play all that well. He fumbled. He lost that really memorable fumble against the Broncos in that game, week 16 of 2015. He played really bad in the playoff game against the Steelers, like really bad. He had a late touchdown pass, which kind of bailed out his reputation. But I mean, that was a bad performance by far, like by all standards in the playoff game. He had a couple of decent games, but again, like who were they against? The Niners, who were terrible that year, and I don't know, maybe a game or two more of decent play, but he played. He had a couple of nice games against some bad teams. Is he better than the fifth rounder? Yeah, he's probably like a third or fourth rounder, but I don't think he's going higher than the third round of this year's draft.
That's what I would think too. And you know, he did play pretty poorly in that wild card game against the Steelers. I think he had at least 3 turnovers. I think he had 2 interceptions, maybe, and a lost fumble. And then he had 2 other lost fumbles.
He fumbled a lot. People forgot about how many times he fumbled.
I think he fumbled 3 times in the game, and the team recovered 2 after he threw, I think, 2 interceptions and lost another fumble. And then there was also the Giovanni Bernard fumble on that questionable hit by Ryan Shazier. Obviously, weather played a huge factor in that game as well. Scott, real quickly, your thoughts on A.J. McCarron if he were to be entering this year's draft?
Yeah, I agree with everything you and Connor say. I think we tend to overvalue him because the thoughts of trading him away, and we're like, oh, if we trade him, we better get a first-round pick. Well, who's going to give you a first-round pick? I mean,
that's not happening.
And Dalton went out. There was a noticeable drop in talent as far as the crispness in the throws, the accuracy in the throws, knowing the offense. Granted, he was a lot younger. Dalton was in his 5th year. He was just kind of stepping in, trying to learn the offense. And in Dalton's first year, he didn't exactly look that great. So it's hard to know in year 3 or 4 if McCarron may matter. But I'd say if draft, it is a weaker draft. I can see someone taking him in the 2nd round. Kind of not as the prospect he was when he was drafted, but I guess today I could see so equivalent of trading like a late 2nd round pick for him, especially since it is and if you are desperate enough, I could see a team saying, hey, he's been around for 3 years. If I knew I could get a guy who has 3 years of practice experience, a handful of NFL games, yeah, I'd rather have him than someone who I could get in the 2nd or 3rd round.
Yeah, I do think that this year he probably would have propelled at least a round or 2 up. And I think even when the Bengals drafted him in the 5th round, some people were a tiny bit surprised that he lasted that long. I think, a lot of people thought he might have been a day 2 guy, maybe 4th round, but getting him in the 5th was a good deal there. Good stuff, guys. Just kind of a little hypothetical. It was fun to think about. I know it's a little skewed question because we're talking about players who have taken NFL snaps as opposed to those who have not. So, being able to use hindsight is something, but just got the wheels a turning for me. This is a weak class, so just food for thought. Let's end before we get to fan questions. Let's end on one kind of fun question that's draft related, and we can make it Bengals related. A lot of us we have a lot of favorite football movies. Whether they're comedies, whether they're dramas or what have you, and they go back into the 60s, 70s, and up to present day. If you think back to some of your favorite football movies, and you kind of tie in the colorful characters that are in a number of those movies. And you look at, we talked about the Bengals' needs high in this draft, running back, wide receiver, defensive end, linebacker, a lot of different positions, maybe even tight end. Think back to your guys' favorite football movies, some of your favorite characters and the positions they played in those movies. What are a couple of players from movies that you think the Bengals would be drafting should they be in this draft class, Scott?
Well, I know I'd say my favorite football movie has got to be Rudy, and Rudy was
Yeah,
an
it's a
edge
good
rusher
one.
in that one play, but I would not um, put Rudy, if I was picking someone, I would not grab him just because
Locker room guy. Locker room guy.
he is, but I want someone who can actually go up against an NFL lineman. So the two guys who I thought of, the two players who I thought of were, I am a big proponent of us needing a kicker. We need a kicker. There are two movies I've seen that have people who do a fairly good job of kicking. One of them is I would either pursue Kathy Ireland from Necessary Roughness.
That's awesome. Okay.
Or there is a movie called Facing the Giants. It's one of these low budget, pretty gospel movies. You give your life to Jesus, and then everything works out fine. You never have a problem in this life, kind of. Anyway, there's at the end of the movie, there's kicks a long game-winning field goal. So you have a guy who can hit long field goals under pressure. Now, granted, he had people praying for him, and his dad was able to get up out of the wheelchair and because he believed in God. But he made a game-winning kick. How many times have we seen Nugent miss a game-winning kick? I'm going to say either that field goal kicker from Facing the Giants movie or Kathy Ireland.
Okay. There's another interesting kicker from the movie The Replacements. If you've seen that movie, he is a guy from the United Kingdom, very colorful character and pretty funny in the movie itself. Nigel Gruff, if you remember him, blonde-haired guy, could kick the ball a mile. Obviously had some off-field issues with gambling and all of that stuff that got him into some trouble, but that's another kicking possibility. Connor, you're on the younger spectrum of this show, so maybe yours will be a little more from recent movies, but what are a couple of players from football movies based on positions of need for the Bengals that if they were in this year's draft, you would like to see them select?
I only have like one movie which I can really think of where there's people, which is The Longest Yard, the 2005 version with Adam Sandler or whatever. Um, and I would say, what's this guy? The Great Khali or something like that. The former WWE or WWF. He played defensive end or defensive line, I think, in
Was he the
in the
guy that
movie.
Sandler played ping pong with?
I don't know, but this dude was 7'1" and
Yeah, yeah,
346 pounds. So give me that guy on the defensive line. I mean, he fits the Bengals mold. He's 7'1".
yeah. And he destroyed people. He also played fullback for him, I think. He was a lead blocker for him as well. So
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a while. So I mean, or give me Stone Cold Steve Austin. Michael Irvin played someone. Just give me Michael Irvin. Give me Michael Irvin 10 years ago.
there,
I'll take that.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, I've got a few, and one is from that movie. It's a different player. I would go Meggett, the running back. Even though he got hurt in the big game, he was a stud in that movie. And actually, I believe Nelly has some in real life has some significant football experience in his background. And he was shifty and could catch the ball, and I really liked him. There was the linebacker. I'm trying to remember his name in the movie, Danny something. In The Replacements, he was played by John Favreau, an absolute menace of a linebacker. If you remember the movie, he was a former cop, and ended up playing. He was Danny Bateman, I think was his name in the movie. Just a beast of a linebacker, and really liked him as in that movie. He was pretty psycho. Really liked him. Number of other routes you could go. I guess I would also say if you want to again kind of keep it a little recent. If you remember the movie, Remember the Titans, there was also another linebacker / kind of defensive end played by Ryan Hurst, and he plays a character called Jerry Bertier. Unfortunately, in the movie and in real life, that person not only was paralyzed, but then was later, I believe, killed in a drunk driving accident. But Jerry Bertier was a high school All-American and a stud as well. Julius Campbell, if you remember, the other guy on the other side was another stud. So just a fun little question, obviously kind of tapping into pop culture as well as tying it into the Bengals and the NFL draft, as we're a week away from the festivities. So you can let us know, listeners, what you think about the past couple of topics we talked about. Where would Andy Dalton go in the draft? Where would A.J. McCarron go in this year's draft based on what you've seen from them so far and the talent in this year's draft? Is the running back position being kind of back in vogue for the NFL and teams? Do you think that's a trend we'll start seeing, be it from Ezekiel Elliott last year to the guys this year? And what are some of your favorite football movie characters, and who would you like to see on the Bengals if they were in this year's draft? We'd love to hear from you. You can get in touch with us via email, theobinsider@gmail.com, on Twitter @BengalsOBI. You can, all of our content's on Cincy Jungle. You can leave comments there. We're on iTunes, we're on SoundCloud, we're on YouTube, and we're live on Cincy Jungle and YouTube every week. So if you're able to join us live, you can leave a comment and a question, that sort of thing. We'll get to it. We appreciate it. Having a little fun with the Bengals in the NFL draft so far. Let's close up with some fan questions, guys. We didn't get to these last week just because of a time constraint. We've got a few minutes here before we get out of here. The first one, and it's from a gentleman who emailed us, and he has been listening to all kinds of former podcasts that both I've been involved with, and other major podcasts that revolve around the Bengals, and that's Eric Oxley, otherwise known as Doc Ox. Great guy. We love hearing from him. Kind of a long question. He writes, what do you guys think about teams being required to release their draft boards after the draft is complete? With the expert prognosticators throughout the land chiming in with their player rankings and stating who our Bengals should take, wouldn't it be fun to see how our War Room and others rank the draft class so we could compare them to the actual selections? If I recall, the Cowboys board was leaked a few years ago, and it created some enjoyable discussions. And then the only downside I could see would be some possible hurt feelings from players if they're not rated as high as some thought on certain draft boards. Scott, I'm going to start with you on this one. You recently wrote something for Cincy Jungle, a little bit similar to what we talked about last week in terms of which draft analysts do you trust the most. And I think you wrote one that went up on the site on Wednesday talking about which draft analysts are actually the most accurate in their guesses with teams. Do you think that this, I mean, it's kind of a creative question. Do you think that teams should be, I don't want to say forced to do it, but do you think that it could be something, draft boards from a particular team could be available just to kind of see, or do you think it's something that should just continue to be kept close to the vest?
As a fan, I'd love to see it. I think the fans, for the same reason fans love Hard Knocks, they would love something like this. Anything behind the scenes after the fact that kind of takes you through the process of, the scouting, it's kind of like what you see when they are evaluating who they're going to cut on Hard Knocks. So we're, this guy, we're going after that guy. This guy, we're looking to see this or that from him. This guy's not panning out in practice. This guy needs to do this better. Yeah, that'd be awesome. When you're sitting in where the scouts and the GM, if we had a GM, but assuming we did, and the scouts and the coaches all have their meetings and they're talking about the different players they've met and the evaluations and how they're ranking them, and then kind of following them on draft day. I mean, I think many fans would love to see something like that. That being said, I don't know if that's something that would happen. And the reason I say that is a lot of fans or a lot of teams like to keep that information kind of confidential. They don't want other teams knowing what they're thinking as far as strategies, because that's something that goes beyond just that 1 year who we're cutting. It kind of goes into their core philosophy of what they believe, and then down the road, if they're looking at maybe pushing a player from another guy off the practice squad, it kind of gives you insights. Oh, this team was really looking at this guy. Let's not put him on the practice squad. Let's keep him because we don't want the Browns, whoever to take him from us. I think it'd be very hard the league to convince teams to do that. And if they did, I'd assume that I could see the Patriots doing it, but I think they would give you a total BS award.
Probably.
And I think other teams would probably follow along. But as a fan, I would love to see it. I just don't know if it's something that they could do, unless it's something that they could do like a Hard Knocks, where it's kind of after the fact, or maybe even like that show with the Arizona Cardinals on Netflix, where it was kind of like a year later. So, kind of everything's said and done, and you just you let the team kind of edit out stuff that I think might be a little too confidential as far as some of their in-depth what they do. So I'd love to see it, and I think there's a way it could be done. And the NFL likes money, so I could see them looking at it as another revenue stream, making a channel doing it. So I love the idea.
Yeah, it's a very interesting idea. I think fans would eat it up. I think mock draft experts would also love to see that, and probably might even change, how they end up ranking players in the future. I just don't see it happening ever. I think it's part of the secrecy thing. I think a lot of teams have already kind of shied away from Hard Knocks. I mean, some teams just do it, and that's kind of what it is. And I think it's a great documentary, very cool for fans. I just think this is a little too burrowed deep in terms of I don't know if you want to say airing dirty laundry of teams and how they do things. There are a couple of people associated with teams. I think Dave Lapham, in terms of the Bengals, has a very strong pulse as to what the Bengals draft board looks like every year. And for what they do in the first round, I think Lapham's a pretty reliable source. Connor, your thoughts on if draft boards should be released? You dabble in the draft as well. Obviously, interesting thought. Do you think it should happen? Do you think it ever will happen? I don't know.
I mean, it'd be fun, but no, I like it the way it is. The whole leak stuff is just annoying to me. And I don't know, it's just the mock draft. I think part of what makes the draft so fun is watching, everyone's mock drafts just go to crap as soon as one pick is made. Blake Bortles goes off the board at 3 and 2 years ago or whatever it was, and everyone starts freaking out because he wasn't there in their mock draft 4.7 or whatever. Like, I don't know. It's like the whole teams want a competitive advantage. It's just not a practical idea. It'd be fun, but it's never going to happen. So I don't know. I don't really even see that much of a. I don't know. It'd be fun, I guess, in theory, but it's not going to happen. And I could also even see it being more fun in the sense that teams, or I just like watching people, these mock drafters who think they know everything, just realize they don't know everything. It's just it makes you appreciate how much teams know and how thorough their evaluation process is, because everyone else just seems to think that they know it all, whereas these teams whose job it is to evaluate players on a professional level don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, and obviously, sometimes the mock drafters are more accurate than the teams. The teams rate guys higher and they end up whiffing on them, and the mock drafters are right on other players that they should have taken. But you're right. These guys work for an NFL franchise and are paid well to do so for a specific reason. So, that's how it is. And I don't think there's ever going to be a mandate from the NFL to say, hey, release your draft boards after the thing. Maybe teams would, if they really want to do it, could voluntarily do it. I just don't see teams doing that. I think, as a fan, though, I think that would be very cool to see, and especially who they took and the guys that maybe were selected in front of the player they took and how they had them ranked. I think that would be pretty interesting, but I just don't really see it happening unless a team voluntarily does it. Good question from Doc Ox, though. Thanks for emailing us. We had a question in the chat room from Aaron Siegel, and I kind of wanted to avoid this just because we're big on on the draft this week, but there is yet more news about Adam Jones. And for those who don't know, there was some off-season workouts that are taking place at Paul Brown Stadium with Bengals players, and Adam Jones was there and volunteered to be interviewed by the media. And I guess it was Joe Daneman from local Fox News Cincinnati who asked him a question about something akin to the idea of, does Jones have a message to the fans after this recent incident? An opportunity for Jones to show contrition to the fans, give a brief message, apologize, and, say I'm moving on, that sort of thing. And instead, he didn't, I don't want to say he blew up at the reporter, but he told him to leave. He told him, I told you not to ask me that question. And he doesn't apparently want to answer any more questions from that specific reporter the rest of the year, according to his statement he made on video. Aaron kind of asks about that situation. Let me ask, do you believe Adam Jones' confrontation will ensure a suspension if it wasn't already in the cards? And if so, who will start? Scott, the idea of this adding fuel to the fire of a potential suspension, and I mean, your thoughts on his actions on this? Pretty inexplicable, at least from my end.
I'll just give a quick answer. I don't think it will. I all agree that what he did was just totally absurd, uncalled for. That being said, I don't think what he did is going to change if he's suspended or not by the league. And I don't think it's going to change his employment by the team. I think if the team is willing to stick with him through what he had done back in January, I don't think this is going to bother them. And similarly, I think there's nothing with grumbling at a reporter that is suspendable. I think if he does get a suspension from the league, it's probably from the earlier stuff. What I think it will do is turn fans off even more. The fans who want him gone and still see him on the team are even going to be more frustrated with him. And the fans who are maybe on the fence, I think, are now probably a little more on the side of, yeah, we just want to see this guy go. And as much as I like Joe Mixon as a prospect, I think now if you add Joe Mixon and you still have Adam Jones, I think you are just opening yourself up to even more criticism from outside, especially if Adam Jones does another thing between now and the start of the season, and the team still does nothing with Adam Jones. So I think the team kind of dug their heels in that we are sticking with him. I think we still need to see, but I think every time Adam Jones opens his mouth in front of the camera, it's just driving the fans further away. I don't know if it's driving fans away from the team, but it's definitely driving fans away from him.
Yeah.
And doing nothing to help the image of the Bengals outside of Cincinnati.
Right. Connor, your thoughts on the situation?
I think it's an interesting one. I have split opinions because obviously Adam Jones, he's going to be like that. It was definitely not unexpected. It was pretty, anytime he's on camera, he says stupid things. He had the whole, I mean, what's more embarrassing, what he said to Joe Daneman or his tirade where he insinuated that Antonio Brown was faking a concussion? I think the latter was way more embarrassing to Bengals fans. After Antonio Brown suffered that injury, for Adam Jones to basically just, add salt to that wound, and it was really just uncalled for. And then he had, he went off on Terrell Pryor that one time. I don't know if that was him or Dre or a combination of both. But, that's just kind of Adam Jones. And it's a question of whether or not people think journalistic integrity, what the exact definition of that is. Because, you have a guy who tells the guy, hey, don't ask me about this. And people are going to say, well, he wasn't specifically told not to ask about, a potential apology. But then, you hear Jones say, didn't I just tell you not to ask me this? And he's like, yeah, but like Joe Daneman was like, yeah, but, and then he says, whatever else he was going to say. Like, he knew what he was doing. And again, it's a matter of what your opinion is. If you think that's a reporter's job is to ask tough questions, then you'll probably love, Daneman for doing that. If you think a reporter's job is to, journalist has responsibility to do what players ask them to do, in addition to what the official rules are presented by the team or the league or whatever. then it's a matter of interpretation. Personally, I think that if a guy, I don't like when reporters ask questions that I don't like. It makes a guy, and it's a way irrational example when you're comparing the two. But I think of when the Houston reporter was asking Draymond Green last year, hey, the last time you guys came here, Houston had like a flood or whatever, and now you guys are coming here again. Do you think do you think the Warriors have anything to do with that? And it was just like, what is this guy talking about? The guy got fired for it, but it was just one of those things where there's so many interesting, relevant questions you could ask, and I don't know. It's just Jones has had every opportunity to make an apology. If he wanted to apologize, he didn't need a reporter to ask him. If he wanted to apologize, he could have just done it on Instagram, on Twitter, on the Bengals website. Like he has every means to do it. So I don't know. I don't buy the whole this is his only opportunity to apologize. It was dumb. And do I think that it has to do I think a suspension could be in the works for this? My answer is I don't know, because the NFL seems to be completely just they don't understand what they're doing with suspensions. I mean, we saw Vontaze Burfict get suspended for what, 3 games, I think, for maybe it was 4 for his hit on Antonio Brown and quote unquote past history, when guys like Aqib Talib make an intentional face masking penalty in the Super Bowl, and then he has a self-inflicted gun wound. Guys like Johnny Manziel doesn't get suspended. I know it's like, and then you have Sheldon Richardson, who last year had he led police on a high-speed chase going 143 miles per hour in a car, had a 12-year-old in the back seat, and the car reeked of marijuana, and there was a loaded semi-automatic handgun in the back seat, and he got a 1-game suspension for that. So do I think Adam Jones yelling at a reporter is going to get him, is going to impact his chances of suspension, which, by the way, I don't even know if it happened or not. Do I think that impacts his chances? No. But, the NFL has done crazier things. So I don't know. All in all, I think that, personally, I can see both sides of the story. I think both people are at fault. The reporter could have just not asked him the question. Adam Jones, like I said, has had every chance to apologize if he wants to apologize, but he hasn't. And it has to do with a legal trial, or at least you could make the argument that Adam Jones doesn't say anything because it's, an impending trial or whatever. But then, it's also on Adam Jones. You can't not, get frustrated with the guy for blowing up at anyone anytime he seems to be talking to anyone. So yeah, I guess that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I'm going to try and be a little brief. We're running short on time here, but in terms of the last question, if so, who will start? I think the team would give William Jackson III the nod as long as he's healthy. I think they really like him, and I think he's more athletic than Darqueze Dennard, and I think he would be a very athletic combination opposite of Drake Kirkpatrick if Jones were to miss some time. In terms of this specific instance, adding fuel to the fire of a potential suspension, I don't think this has anything to do with it. He didn't, I don't think he swore at Joe Danneman or anything like that. He didn't really yell at him. He just kind of is like, dude, I don't want to answer this. And told him to go away. So if you don't like the instance, I don't think that it adds to the suspension. I think it's the off-field stuff. I think it's the past history that would lead to a suspension, and obviously the verdict in this case with him that would lead to a suspension. And I agree with you, Connor, that obviously the NFL is very fickle when it comes to how they dole out suspensions, and some of them are very fair, some of them are very unfair. There's not really a code or a set of rules or guidelines for teams to for the league to suspend players based on certain instances. So that's kind of the thing. I'm going to go on a mini rant here. I agreed with a lot of what you said, Connor, and there's a lot of rationale with what you said in terms of, he supposedly told him not to ask the question, and he still asked it. I don't get why you don't want to answer that question. I don't understand.
For sure. It's understandable.
I don't understand why, and you alluded to the fact that Pac-Man has had a number of chances. All he's really done in terms of public statements since the incident is really thank the Bengals organization for giving him another chance, and he thanks Mike Brown and all of that. Great. It's not just the team that gets a black eye; it's the fan base, and this is a team that hasn't done the best job of reaching out to its fan base. It's done a better job in recent years, but not still outstanding in terms of fan outreach and whatnot. And this whole thing is an embarrassment, and it's an embarrassment that he still gets to stick around and make millions of dollars again this year to play for this team after not only doing another off-field idiotic incident, but not even really apologizing to the fans. I think if he didn't want to answer the question, all he had to really say was, look, I'm sorry. I messed up. I'm doing things to correct it. It's in the process. I apologize to the fans, and that's all I really have to say about it. And then if he was pressed further, then you could understand maybe, hey, I just answered that. Let's move on. This is a guy who supposedly is in court-mandated anger management and is not showing that it's having a positive effect in terms of this kind of situation. And we can sit here and say, well, for the most part, he's kind of kept his nose relatively clean with the Bengals. Whether it's this incident, he punched a girl at a bar a few years back. There's the thing with Amari Cooper where he slammed his head to the turf a couple of years ago. You mentioned the thing with Antonio Brown. He's just a pot stirrer, whether it's kind of in fun with some of the things he does on Instagram and all of that, or whether it's intentional or unintentional, just really law breaking. He doesn't get it, and it's a shame. He's got a family now. He's going into his mid-30s. You would think at this point he would just kind of say, look, I gotta calm down, and this is stuff I gotta stop doing. And it's not happening. And I get that he maybe didn't want to answer the question. There was a much more polite way to do that, or he could have given it a short, brief answer and let's move on. I at least from what I've seen, like you said, Connor, I don't think he has publicly apologized to the fans, at least, for embarrassing them with his actions. And maybe he doesn't feel he needs to, but and maybe some fans say, hey, he's a football player, who cares? But it's just something that as a decent human being that has a set of moral code, you kind of would think like, hey, I feel bad about what I did. I screwed up. And he really hasn't done that, at least to the fans. He maybe said he's done it to his teammates, maybe, and definitely to ownership. But very weird situation. I hope that we kind of answered those questions, the series of questions that Aaron asked there with the Jones situation. A lot to still play out with that. As of now, though, it looks as if he will still be with the Bengals in 2017 and probably starting at corner opposite of Dre Kirkpatrick, at least for this year. Mixed feelings about that. But, if that's the case, let's hope he doesn't miss time. Let's hope he plays maybe a little better than he did last year at corner. I mean, he still played okay, but let's hope he steps up his play, and let's hope that this stuff is behind him. As of now, I don't think he's ever going to change who he is. I just think this is who he is, and we can continue to get offended by it. We can continue to get annoyed, but I think that's what you get with this guy, and for better or for worse, that's kind of the deal. And for now, he's under contract over the next couple of years with the team, so may have to deal with this kind of stuff for at least 2 more years. We'll see. Thanks for the questions tonight, guys. We ran a little long yet again, but we got to a lot of good stuff, so I'm excited about that. I do want to give 2 quick shout outs. Greg L in the chat room. I missed this, but Greg said when we were talking about movie characters, he said Icebox from Little Giants. I thought that was pretty funny.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah. I thought that was a good one. And in talking about draft prospects, a lot of people were talking about O.J. Howard at number 9 and how he could be a long-term solution for Tyler Eifert based on injuries or his contract status. And Slip Ammo in the chat room made a nice little pun calling Tyler Eifert Tyler I'm hurt. I thought that was pretty funny. No offense, Tyler. Still good stuff. Funny. Thanks for all the interaction in the chat room again. You can join us live every week, Cincy Jungle and YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, our SoundCloud channel. You can get in touch with us via email, theobinsider@gmail.com. You can get in touch with us on Twitter at BengalsOBI. Get all of our content there. Go on iTunes, get our content. Thanks for tuning in live this week. Again, we will be doing a live draft show next Thursday. We're not sure about the length of the show. We'll probably get started shortly after the draft commences and kind of go through that top 10. We don't anticipate the Bengals trading, but it might happen. We'll see. But we'll break down that pick on Thursday night. And then also you can check out Cincy Jungle for all of the draft insight, analysis, news, all of that stuff connected to the Bengals as draft weekend goes through next weekend. I can't believe it's already here. So good stuff tonight. Connor, thanks for joining me, bud.
Yeah, it's fun, man.
Yep. Well, hopefully you'll be able to join us next week. And
yeah, we'll see. I don't know about work.
All right. Well, hopefully you can. And thanks for everyone for tuning in. And we'll see you next week.